I'll try to keep this succinct. By the letter of the law, and also in terms of very fundamental elements of ethics, it is no different if you traffic children for R&D connected to medical product lines than it is if you traffic children connected to R&D for weapons. And just because somebody abused their role as a litigator and as a lawyer in connection with litigation involving the welfare of children in order to set up a scheme to advantage herself or himself politically based upon the proliferation of the biomed or biotech sector, including in alleged healthcare or health insurance, does not mean that they are absolved of the same standards and even in some ways higher standards than those that would be applied to people that did the same thing with the military. You're not allowed to traffic children for alleged health care any more than you're allowed to traffic children for alleged military or security purposes. You're just not. And if somebody agreed to take what they believed was a good faith and a positive effort connected to their healthcare advocacy and conspire with the energy sector to manufacture diseases and then to put those diseases upon children to create biomed or biotech sectors included in connection with R&D, even if it's supposed to be about supporting education, or even if it's supposed to be about supporting engineering paradigms around future infrastructure development, it's still trafficking. So, we're just going to have to deal with the implications of that. And you got this period right now that is a compounding period of the last several years where people within the alleged healthcare sector have intentionally undermined the military, specifically through veterans healthcare, and have been completely disingenuous about their role as healthcare providers, as evidenced by the fact that they refuse to follow policy and standards specifically for healthcare providers in the pursuit of some ulterior agenda. And that is exactly what COVID-19 is revealing. They intentionally intended to undermine the actual military so they could supplant the military. The problem is they had standards they literally had to apply. There were rules, there were policies to protect people against exploitation. They did not do their job. So you have no more justification to try to challenge or to try to incriminate the military any more than healthcare. In some ways, I contend it's an even higher standard. See, if you go into the military, or you engage with the military, you understand that there is the combat option. At all times, you understand people that sign up for the military have agreed not only to die, but they've agreed to kill. And there are supposed to be standards. There are supposed to be rules. There are supposed to be manners in which to address that internally, but ultimately, they're supposed to be held accountable to a civilian leadership. If that civilian leadership fails to hold them accountable, that civilian leadership needs to be held accountable. That civilian leadership does not have a right to conspire with other civilians to completely degenerate the standards of other sectors in order to create them clandestinely as something to replace the military, including in manners that only exacerbate the worst potential accusations of abuses by and within the military. Anybody that would think they're justified in trying to issue a challenge to the military, including in a manner that would replace the role of the military, socially, politically, or economically, would have to demonstrate that within their own sector and within the standards of their own sector, that they can maintain their own standards, or they do not have any authority to try to justify clandestine action to undermine the military. Not only are they not holding the military accountable, they're not holding themselves or each other accountable. There's absolutely no legitimacy for this, regardless of who you allow to be in a command authority position. And by refusing to publicly address, acknowledge, and promulgate that command structure, by refusing to actually establish who you're willing to take orders to kill from, then you've got a very, very substantial burden of proof you have not met. They have not met the proof. Having some sort of crypto feed that clandestinely diverts and launders money to finance somebody, including through their philanthropic or nonprofit endeavors, so that then they can remotely influence policy, including in efforts to actually undermine the Constitution of the United States by intentionally promoting completely unconstitutional legislation, both on the state level and on the congressional level, and or to co-conspire to back up or support the implementation of completely unconstitutional executive orders, and especially if you disabuse your alleged professional affiliations, to co-conspire with judicial officers to game the judicial system and create what is now a more than 10-year process of taking the system of jurisprudence in this country in the completely wrong direction. You haven't done anything to fortify the specific constitutional focuses that were chosen in the stead of others in 2008, 2009, 2010. You've also undermined the standards, even within the particular constitutional perspective you are attempting to promulgate. And that is exactly what's going on when it has to do with addressing matters related to the healthcare or biomed sector versus the military or the security sector. There were rules, there were standards within your own sector. You don't get a justification for completely trashing and intentionally violating everything that's your own standard, because there's another standard that's even worse than yours. So you have to sabotage your own in order to what? Obtain leverage over theirs? The members of the military should have stood up to and against any civilian leadership that was attempting to manipulate them or the people in the military into committing crimes or engaging in matters that were unconstitutional, including in manners that allowed for the normalization or legitimization of organized crime or some form of gang recruitment within the military. You don't get to make the military all black ops and then say anything goes while you hoard everything about the nation's wealth and then try to game it out through some sort of false tech paradigm. The military failed to execute appropriate leadership, but the military was accountable to the civilian leadership that failed. And they don't get to just offload or offset their losses by trying to promulgate a false paradigm related to alleged healthcare or biomed or biotech development any more than the gas and oil sector does.